Hi, and welcome back to SDI Coffee Break, where we're again with Pat Bolger from Cornwall. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you, David.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
And we've been talking about, in this series of videos, we've been talking about a new publication that Hornbill are due to bring out very, very soon, which is focused on the path out of COVID-19, which I think is a great topic. And we've had a preamble. We've looked at one of the key stages, and this is another stage. And this one talks about stabilization. So it talks about developing digital strategies, remote collaboration, and reducing firefighting, which is obviously a big one. I think I've certainly seen when I've spoke to some organisations recently, they feel as if that demand spike is tailing off a little bit at the minute. So, yeah. But it still doesn't mean we're out of the woods at all, does it? We're still in the middle of stuff, especially maybe
not by a mile.
Maybe 3 million tickets. That's the wrong word. Incidents, maybe in some weird queue somewhere, right? So yeah, I think we're out of the woods yet, but. So when you look at the organisations and you look at stabilisation, what have you seen some of the better organisations do to cope with stabilising? I mean, for example, you talk about in the publication, effective service catalogue and self-service portal as things that have contributed to stabilising. So what have you seen in relation to stabilising, Pat, that the good organisations are doing?
Right. Well, I mean, a couple of the things you mentioned there, service catalogue, self-service, those. Well, I was talking to one customer from South Yorkshire, passenger transport executive, and he told me that in March, their self-service went up by 71%. So 71%. And on top of that, what they noticed at that time was that basically people are using things like Microsoft Teams and various different other tools to chat to the service desk. So they took the opportunity to introduce live chat, which is one of the things that we offer. But then you add all this kind of service management capabilities, like the ability to escalate a chat into a ticket, all of that kind of stuff. So organizations were doing that particularly well. I had another chat with a guy called Michael Sharp, who actually manages the service desk at JMW Solicitors. And he told me the story about when lockdown actually first was announced. He was on holiday in Wales, in his car, on a mobile phone, redesigning processes for analog departments so that they could function while he was on holiday. So modern, anyone who had a fairly modern service management tool at this point in time was able to kind of respond and react really, really quickly. And I think that sets the precedent in terms of what's going to be needed going forward. IT teams have to be able to do things at breakneck speed. And it's not just things within IT, but things within the other part of the organization. So designing processes, automating stuff, integrating stuff. You can't run those as huge, big projects with consultants and implementation partners and technical gurus all over the place. This change will force IT organizations to have that level of self-sufficiency and to be able to do stuff at speed.
That's really, really interesting, especially some of those stats. That's really incredible. But it's, again, we came back to that sort of necessity, the necessity of where we are right now. And I think what is really cool is, I think, if you look at, we talk about adapting, and sometimes I think we may do ourselves a little bit of disjustice in some organizations, when we consider and the way in which we respond and adapt to situations like this. I think we're good at recovering from things, like a major incident and stuff like that. I'm not saying we're perfect. But I think that's where maybe some of our bread and butter is. You know what I mean? As a support part of the support industry, maybe. What about then, right? You talk about the role of the CIO. Now, this is always a changing dynamic, right? And you talk about the CIO and what the CIO is doing, should be doing, could be doing. And I sort of thought about, well, is the role of the CIO changed forever? We know that it changes almost every other month. The CIO role changed, right? But has it really changed forever now, right? Is the CIO role something different? And what are you seeing some of the more maybe successful organizations and more successful CIOs, what are they doing differently right now?
I think in general terms, the CIO, if they're engaged in shaping and defining the business strategy, typically, and actually the stats prove it out. So I think if the CIO is actively engaged and moving in the same direction that the business wants, overall the IT organization is 2.5 times more likely to be as highly affected by the organization. In addition to that, Any digital programs that they've got running are 1.8 times more likely to have a significant impact.
Wow.
So I think in the past, the CIO really, their voice kind of reverberated from time to time at the board table, but it wasn't necessarily something that was followed. I mean, we mentioned the level of investment on average in IT being 3.3% of revenue. And that, to me, is a clear indicator of the importance of technology. Of course, that's changed now. That has absolutely changed because technology has, IT proved its worst during this crisis. But it's now about what we do next and how we prove our value. And I think that CIOs who are actually looking at reshaping that strategy and actually delivering increasing value, not just within IT, but within every part of the organization, that's how the role is going to change. This concept of disjointed systems and kind of pedestrian pace of change, that's gone. So CIOs now are going to have to make a case for investment in new technology that drives self-sufficiency and efficiency right across the piece.
Do you know, it's a different way of and I'm a big believer in value. You know, my job title says a lot about value, right?
Indeed it does.
I think value is absolutely everything. It demands a different vernacular, vocabulary, relationship, different measurements. So you can't just walk into a room, I don't know, board C-level, whatever, or another customer's board C-level and say, there we are, there's our first time fixed rate. I'm not saying that doesn't have a value. It does, absolutely. But it's a whole new swathe of sort of meaningful, quantified and qualitative information in relation to how you drive value in an organization. For me, that's a big step. And I know organizations have been going on that journey, and we've been espousing the value of value, right, forever, haven't we, right? And I wonder if this is the point where people sort of just don't go, value, that fluffy thing, and the hard yards turn into value creation. I'd love to think that will be another outcome of this.
Well, not to promote yet another thing that we've done, but Nigel Martin, our Chief Marketing Officer, he's been involved and he was responsible for $1.5 billion worth of product at his previous role. Wow. And he's just written a piece about the essential kind of approach to investment in service management and how you create your business case. And the main point that he was making within that is that if you go back and try to follow the old blueprints and the old plans, I mean, HM Treasury have got a document that outlines how you go about building a business case. It's 118 pages long. Wow. I mean, are you kidding me? You know, that just makes no sense whatsoever. So his take on that is, first of all, you're going to need investment. You're going to need allies. So you need to be talking to the board and actually understanding their perspective on things and what they want, using their language, using the terms that actually align to where the business is actually headed. Mm-hmm. And I think just creating this kind of business case for investment in new technology because it's going to improve your first time fix ratio, that's not going to cut it. You now are entering a period where every part of the organization is going to be fighting for that kind of investment. And if your business case is dead in the water unless you actually have aligned your strategy for that investment to be in line with where the business needs to head. And as we enter hyper transformation, to make your case stronger than any other case, then you are going to have to appeal to the other leaders within the organization and actually show that you're going to solve some of their problems.
Totally agree. And I, as ever, we always talk about people, process, technology, and I know I look forward to a new bit to that, but essentially it's the same thing for me, And that people thing, over the years, I think that the narrative of technology and the relationship between all that has changed so much. And coming from a service desk background, I think people certainly I know and myself champion the people aspect in all that, And it is about relationships. For me, it's about how you engage with an ally. Great word, great, and how you align and ally yourself with the rest of the business in a really dynamic way, in a less non-soloed, less soloed, siloed, way. I think,
It's also the way. It's also about the thinking, because if you go in with your business case, really you should be presenting not only why you're looking to secure investment, what the other options are. Yeah. So what happens if we do nothing? What happens if we outsource? And that's a point that Nigel makes in the paper, is basically saying, if you don't do that, those discussions will happen. And you'll be just informed about the result. So the whole idea, the way that we've done things in the past,
I agree,
it's just not going to cut it anymore.
And you know, I think certainly reading about this, right? And if you read some of the stuff out there, PwC, Gartner, that, I think the pressure in the supply chain and how supply chains are going to change over the next few months and beyond are going to be terrific. We're already seeing now organizations that are starting to look at outsourcing and really just like that, just as if it put a tap on, what do I outsource? And not from you know, not to destroy a service, but to build a service where there's more cost control in it and it's more viable longer term. I think that if I was an outsourcer right now and I had all my eggs in all my ducks in the right sort of way, I tell you what I'd be looking for. I'd be rubbing my hands, waiting for business to come through the door. You know, so I think
no question. I mean, it's existed. It's a trend that's existed with kind of the rise of managed service providers and shared services. Is another way of doing it. And basically what happens, you get an effective service organization that really knows what they're doing, and they just basically add value by absorbing the user base of poor performers. That's a trend that's going to continue. So I think that the focus now has to be about how is your IT function delivering against the goals and objectives of the business. And let me tell you, it's going to be cost cutting initially.
I agree.
Efficiency, hyper efficiency.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be very interesting to see how organizations deal with that, the fallout from that, and what that means, you know, to sort of to UK sort of PLC, you know, so very interesting. Let's just touch, before we finish on this one then, let's just touch on technology demand. You mentioned in there, we've talked about this before, Zoom. It's a great story, right? In the first quarter of 2020, seismic increase in subscriptions, 10 million to 100 million subscribers in less than 2-3 months.
Look at our share price.
It's massive, isn't it? Absolutely massive.
In January of this year, it was $71. In June of this year, it was $250. Their market capitalization, if I remember the figures correctly, was about 16 billion or something like that. And now it's significantly more. I can't remember the actual stat. In fact, if I was to search, I'd probably be able to find it. 16 billion in 2019 in the market cap. Now 71 billion.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. And actually, their worth now, their combined worth now is greater than the combined worth of the world's top 7 airlines. There you go.
Wow.
Who could have predicted that?
That is crazy. That is actually crazy. That's
a
really good set. I like that. I'm going to nick all that, Pat.
You're welcome to it.
That's really, really interesting, actually. So let's talk about sort of, you know, have you seen anything else? I mean, we've seen the Zoom story, which is incredible, right? Have you seen anything else? Have you seen any other significant changes to the way that people have you know, used new services, different services like Zoom, and what they've done? Are there any other amazing Zoom stories that you can share?
Well, Teams was it got a pretty dramatic rise. I mean, Microsoft didn't cope too well in the first week or so, but they sorted it out, you know, and people now are getting used to new ways of working. But the challenge you have with all of these collaboration tools is they're just, for the majority, are just video conferencing tools or different ways of having meetings. They don't actually change the way people work significantly, and they're not a replacement. They're not what we would call a destination application. And what that means is the place that your employees go to first thing, the first application they open when they arrive at work. For most people, it's email. And again, that's a dramatic change that we've got to enforce, is basically get people out of their inboxes and into an environment where we're actually working out loud, sharing our ideas, our knowledge, our information, actually understanding what other teams are up to, what the direction of the organization, how that's changing. All of that can't be done with the old technologies that we were using.
Yeah, I agree. Good. All right. Well, now we're going to close on that one then, Pat. Thank you for that, look. And we'll come on to the remainder of the topics or key sort of stages, if you like, in the next few sessions. So thank you for joining us again, Pat. Great conversation. I'm taking all of the data, which is great. I've got it. And thanks for our listeners as well, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you very much.